Hello, the Internet Tough Monkey here once again. Hope you're all well. Thank you much for stopping by. Today's retro game of choice is Formula 1 by CRL Games. This came out in 1985, but it's not the version I owned. I owned the re-release version by Alternative Software that came out in 1988 and had a few legal issues because the cover art was exactly the same as Codemasters Grand Prix Simulator and McLaren chasing down the number 27 Ferrari. But this is a side-scrolling Formula 1 management game, which only had about 9 or 10 screens in the entire game and had the potential to be the most boring, bland game you can possibly imagine. But in actual fact, it was brilliant. I loved it. As a Formula 1 nut growing up in the 80s, this was absolute heaven for me. Although the re-release version was called Formula Grand Prix, it still says Formula 1 on the load screen. I'm going to choose average for my skill and work through good and then up to expert. This is the team selection screen. I'm going to put in my name down the bottom there and then we get to choose one of 6 teams. Now, which team do you think I'm going to choose here? Yes, of course, I'm choosing McLaren. On this screen, you get to add 6 of your own edited names. So you can put your own name in there if you want to, and let's face it, that's what I used to do as a kid when I aspired to be a Grand Prix driver. But for this purpose of the video, I'm going to go with the top 6 drivers from the 2023 Formula 1 World Championship season. So we're going with Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris. On the next screen, you choose 2 companies to sponsor your team through the season. There's meant to be no relevance to which teams give you the most money, but I chose Marlboro because that was who McLaren was sponsored by back in the 80s. This is the driver selection screen. There are 2 pages of all the drivers available to us, including the ones we've just added. You've only got so much money to spend, so you've got to spend it wisely. I've gone with my hero growing up, Nigel Mansell, as my main driver, and as I don't have much more money to spend, I've gone with Lando Norris in the second car. Now, this is the team management screen, one of the most important screens in the entire game. These level bars are an indication of how good each element is. Nigel Mansell being a better driver, his power bar, if you want to call it that, is quite high already, whereas Lando's is quite low. We're ideally wanting to get those power bars all the way to the right-hand side of the screen. What we've got to do here, though, is we've got to buy a new powertrain, a new chassis, a new crew, and what they represent. Power gives you the faster car. The higher that level bar is, the faster the car will go, but you've also got to get your car bar, your chassis, and all the reliability as far up as you possibly can as well. There's no point having a fast car and it being unreliable, otherwise you'll never finish a race. The crew, that dictates how fast your pit crew is when you're going into the pit to change tyres and upgrade your engine and do things like that. So we're trying to get the bars as high as we possibly can. We've only got a small amount of money to spend at the moment, so we can only just get into the blue level at the moment. You've got to build the car up over a few races. This is the race info screen, so we're going to the Brazilian Grand Prix for race 1. We've got 61 laps to do, broken cloudy sky and what the temperature is. So on the next screen we get to choose our tyres, whether we want soft, medium or hard slicks, intermediates or rain tyres. To be totally honest, although for the first couple of races I've forgotten what I'd do, I'd use medium and hard compounds to get to further into race. To be honest, I went with soft tyres for the rest of the season because they're the fastest. You may have to do a few more pit stops. You may pick up a few more punctures along the way, but soft tyres are the fastest. Obviously, if it's drizzling, you do intermediates. If it's raining, you do wet tyres. This is the first grid of the season. Nigel's qualified on the back. Lando's actually done quite well. But this is the main race screen. With the exception of the pit stop, you don't see any other screen for the duration of the race. You just get all the cars, all 12 cars, buzzing past from right to left. And it's amazing how much information you're going to pick up from this single screen. The cars race past, the outline of the screen changes colour with the corresponding colour of the team that's in the lead of the race. So we've now got red for Ferrari. That's going to change, I'm sure, straight away to yellow for Renault. It gives you a very quick indication of which team is doing well in the race at the moment. You've got the leaderboard at the top of the screen there, so you see the top 6 drivers. And then down at the bottom, you've got this ticker that runs past with an annoying sound that goes past. But that gives you critical information about people coming into the pits, changes of the weather conditions, if it's going to start to drizzle or rain, so you can bring your car into the pits. You press P to bring the car into the pits, so press P, a ticker will come up down the bottom saying which car number you wish to choose. My car numbers are number 9 and number 10, and there we go, we've got Norris coming in for a pit stop. So this is my first pit stop of the season, so I choose what tyres I want to go with, and then you get to control the little man. Although you've got 5 people on screen, 4 of them are just standing there pretty much idle, you control this man running around the car by P and I moves him right and left, Q and Z moves him up or down, and then pressing N actually commits the action of changing the tyres. You're in control of all of that with one bloke changing all 4 tyres. Not quite the most efficient way of doing a pit stop, but this is how the game plays it. And look, Lando Norris has had a spin and he's going to come in for another pit stop. On this occasion, I'm going to not only change the tyres, but if you've damaged the car, you've got to then go to the back of the car to perform some kind of, well, in this case it's a chassis check. Sometimes it's an engine, sometimes it's a turbo, or just a normal check. But it's always get your spanner out and attack the back of the car. Same all the time. It just makes the pit stop about 20 to 22 seconds, something like that. Now, I'm spinning through this race pretty quickly. You do see every single lap. Even if your car retires, you get to see every single lap. It's the same every time. Cars just whiz past. You can lose lots of cars during the course of the race, but you will always guarantee a minimum of 6 cars. So you're kind of waiting for all the cars to be retiring and hoping that you've got at least 1 car left in the race. But in this case, Elio De Angelis has won in the Brabham and Nigel's finished 5th. That's relatively respectable for your first race. Unfortunately, Lando was 2 laps down and we are slow at the moment. So there's the driver and constructors championship table after 1 race. And then we go back to the management screen. We get all of our start and prize money, any sponsorship money, and we then improve our car or make any repairs. If the car crashes, you've got to build it from scratch almost, but we're just trying to build the car up as the season progresses. So the second race, we've had 1 car finish. Unfortunately, Lando Norris didn't finish in the second race, but we got 5th and 6th in the third race. So this builds up our prize money, it builds up our sponsorship exposure, and look at that, race number 4, we get our first victory. And not only that, it's a 1-2. Lando Norris comes home first and Nigel Mansell comes home second, and that gives you a big boost in prize money and sponsorship money. Able to develop the car, get those power bars up as far as you possibly can. And there you go, first and second, and that meant we jumped up in the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship. And all the time, every time you get a good finish, your driver's bar is starting to increase. You see, Nigel's has gone up really high, and Lando's has now got a bit of a blue bar on there. But my bank balance is getting higher and higher, so it means I can get those power bars up. Unfortunately, pride always comes before a fall, and we had a double DNF on the next race out, and that really affected my car because I had to rebuild all of those power bars. But very next race, we get another victory. This time it's Nigel Mansell with his first victory of the season. And from this point onwards, Nigel went on a bit of a roll. We were able to develop the car until all those power bars were all the way over to the right, and we had an almost invincible team. And it resulted in Nigel just going on an absolute banshee run, winning almost every single race available, and therefore becoming world champion for the 1985 World Championship season. And McLaren took home the Constructors' Championship. Bonza. But this was all on the average difficulty level. We're going to now move on to the second season, which is going to be the good level. So we're selecting yes for another season. We're selecting 2 more sponsors. I've just gone with the same ones again, Marlboro and I think it was Parmalat. And then we get to choose our drivers again. And Mansell's still available. He's now full value, so he's £250,000. I'm going to go with Nigel again. And what the heck, we're going to go with Lando again. He was £202,000. You see, their skill sets are really high now. Nigel's as good as he could possibly get, and Norris is very nearly there. And this season, we had another dominant run. Nigel winning most of the races, but Lando running in pretty close this time, coming second in the championship, and McLaren being constructors once again. So that's the good level. We're now going on to the expert level. So we're going to do another season, and Mansell's gone. Lotus, the little swines, they've stolen him. I've only got the option of Lando Norris, his full value, so we're going to go with Lando Norris, and I need to pick a second driver. Who am I going to choose? I'm going to go with a rookie known as Lewis Hamilton. I wonder how he'll turn out. But he is genuinely a rookie on this game, so I've got to build him up from scratch, so Lando has got to be favourite going into this season. Now, you don't carry all your money over from the previous season. You've got to build it up from scratch. Oh, this is something I didn't show you before. You can actually bet on each race, but I'm not a gambling man. It's a mug's game. I didn't go for any betting on this game. First race of the season, Nigel, defending double world champion, takes the first race. It's not looking good already. We managed to come home third, but it wasn't actually Lando that came third. It was Lewis in his rookie race. Lando didn't finish. And I had to sacrifice Lewis in the next race to get Lando back on the grid. I didn't have enough money, but it worked. Lando won the race. Although, that said, Lewis was 4 laps off the pace, which wasn't brilliant. And I have to admit, expert level was quite difficult. It took me many races to get enough money to be competitive. Second race out, Alonso came home first in the Renault. And for some reason, Lewis was managed to come home second. And all this time, Lewis is actually doing quite well. Lando had crashed again, so that meant he had to completely rebuild his car, his engine and his chassis. It was costing me a fortune. It was pole position and then crashed. Pole position, then crashed. And then retired with an ignition malfunction. So we had a double DNF here. We were really struggling this season. Again, rebuilt the car, pole position, and he won this race. In fact, it was a 1-2. Lando brought home the car with Lewis behind. It was either feast or famine. We'd either win the race or blow up somewhere. And in the early part of the season, it was Fernando Alonso that was leading the way. We'd managed to get ourselves into first place in the Constructors' Championship, but Lotus were very strong as well. And here we go, this time it's Lando Norris coming home, but where is he gone? Where has he gone? The screen changed, it was purple, we were leading, and he's retired again. This happens so often. Oh, and look, Leclerc has crashed again. Almost 40 years in the future, they're predicting that Charles Leclerc is going to crash his Ferrari all the time. But as the season developed, although Lando Norris was clearly the fastest driver, he just wasn't bringing the car home, so it was actually Lewis Hamilton that was flying the flag for McLaren this season. Well, I say that, he's retired there, hasn't he? And Lando took the victory, so it was either one or the other was bringing the car home, and Norris hits the front in the World Drivers' Championship. Maybe the tide has changed, we're going to win. Oh my God, he's crashed again, hasn't he? And this was the problem for Lando. Every time he crashed, Lewis would win. I'd then rebuild Lando's car, he'd put it on pole, and then he'd go and crash again. It was happening almost every race. It was a good job that Lewis was actually finishing the races for us. It meant that we were still leading the Constructors' Championship. Norris was on pole again, and he's actually finished first. He's won the British Grand Prix. I'm sure he'll be very pleased with that. But he needs some consistent finishers. It did mean that the gap in the Drivers' Championship was now only 5 points. 5 points between Lewis and Lando. Next race out, German Grand Prix, and it's Lewis that comes home first with Lando right up his trumpet. So we're now getting some consistent double point scoring finishers. So from a McLaren constructor's point of view, it's already looking pretty good. And next time out at the Austrian Grand Prix, Lando wins again. Lewis right behind him, but Lando's going on a bit of a roll now. Maybe he can put together a championship challenging run. The points, it's only 5 points in it between Lewis and Lando. It's looking good for Norris, isn't it? Pole position, next race at the Dutch Grand Prix, and he's crashed again. But actually, it's double trouble. Lewis has crashed as well. A double DNF. Both cars crash. I had to rebuild both cars. Still only 5 points in it. You see, I had to completely rebuild both cars. But as you can see, both drivers are as good as they could possibly be. Next race out. Where is everyone? It's a bit of a ropey race. We've retired again. A blown engine. This isn't good. Oh, and Leclerc's crashed again. But at least Lewis comes home with the victory. But as a championship challenge for Lando Norris, this was pretty much where it died for him. He's now 14 points behind, qualified on pole position for the European Grand Prix. This is the second to last race, but Lewis wins again and Lando's down in 5th. I think he's kind of lost the motivation. He knows it's done and dusted this season. Lewis wins again. And that means he's won the World Drivers' Championship. He's already 21 points ahead and there's only 9 points for a race victory. That's it. The season is over. Charles Leclerc puts it on pole for the final race of the season at Estoril in Portugal. Let's play this race through a little bit more detail, shall we? So Charles Leclerc on pole position. Got Williams in second position. Nigel Mansell in, I was going to say red 5, but it's white 5. And a couple of Renaults there. That's Fernando Alonso on 4th position there. We qualified quite poorly in this race. It's a 70-lap race of Portugal. But straight away we're into the lead. It's Lando Norris setting a lap record on lap 1. See what I mean? He was the fastest driver by far in this race season, but he just wasn't consistent enough. Got Niki Lauda leading the race in Brabham. This was quite an exciting race to close the season out. The lead changed hands many times, but at the end of the day, the dominant McLaren team brings it home with a 1-2. Lando Norris leading the cars home with Lewis Hamilton just behind him and everyone else just a distant memory. So, despite his superior pace, his inconsistency led Lewis Hamilton to snatch the World Drivers' Championship away from Lando Norris. The race victories were actually shared quite evenly between Lewis and Lando, but whenever Lando failed to finish, Lewis was there to mop up the goods. And there we go, Lewis Hamilton in his debut season wins the 1987 Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship, and McLaren, we win the Constructors' Championship on expert level. So there you go, Formula 1 on the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. Should have been atrocious, absolutely brilliant. See you next time.